And so it sounds like you kind of felt product market fit almost immediately. And I mean, I guess it makes sense, right? Gyms always want more leads and more customers. But then like you pivoted away from gym ticket, right? You sort of can you take us back to that story? Because I think you had this lead gen business that seemed to be working pretty well. But then from my understanding, you transitioned to I think it was like pay per phone call or pay per action model
Yeah.
and
So
maybe expanded beyond gyms.
yeah. So what had happened was we sort of realized, okay, we can sell leads to gyms. Who else can we sell leads to? And we also quickly realized that not every business that we want to talk to has a sales staff. So how do we figure out a way in which we can actually sell these quote unquote opportunities or leads without having them to do any of their own outreach, from their front office staff, office management, things of that sort. And so the company rebranded as a company called Alpha 411, and it probably was that name for a couple of years. And we started expanding into new industries where we transitioned from that pay per lead model to a pay per phone call model. The basic idea behind that was we were going to drive new phone calls to your business, but the sort of secret sauce, if you will, was that we had a technology that transcripted voice to text, and based on the conversation we were able to determine which calls were actually relevant to new business, and we only billed the clients for what we considered to be a new business phone call. Quick example, right? Chiropractors was a large industry for us. If I called the chiropractor as a salesperson looking to provide them with some sort of new piece of equipment, that would not be considered a new phone call. But if I called the chiropractor and say, hey, rolled out of bed this morning, my back is really hurting, can I come in on Thursday? Whether they booked the appointment with me or not, that was on the front office staff, but that was considered a new business phone call in which we would then charge the client for that opportunity.
Really cool. And so how did it work? Like, were there like landing pages that were out there for chiropractors that, were under Alpha 411 or whatever? And then people would find that landing page and then call through the page. Is that's kind of how
Yeah,
it would
so
work?
so yeah, exactly. It wasn't through Alpha 411. Alpha 411 was never going to be a household name. We actually created branded pages specifically by industry. So you're asking me to go back probably 15 years here on what they were called. I remember chiropractors was called chiroappointment.com. Veterinarians was called localvets.com. There was furniture repair near you. There was dozens of industries. Some we tested that we found out didn't work, and others that were obviously a great success.
Yeah, really cool. So so piggybacking off of sort of local search, spinning up these little microsites off different verticals, and then using that as sort of the lead gen. Yeah, makes
Correct.
a lot of sense. And then eventually you transition to kind of the business that Yext is known for
Mhm.
today, which is like I think of it as kind of listings and search. Can you talk about why you made that switch and kind of what that transition was like?
Yeah. So look, I think that really kind of boils down to a few different, it's a few different things that sort of happened. Number one was that, as I just mentioned, right, the idea of Alpha 4 and 1, the idea of that pay per call model, didn't work for every industry. And that kind of limits your TAM and limits the amount of businesses that you can actually go after. And so that's sort of one impetus for that change is like we need to expand on the businesses and industries we can reach out to. And I think the second piece of it really came down to just sort of an interesting fact about the way that brand or those industries worked. Like I had said, we had these different websites that that would be found online if you searched for a chiropractor or auto glass near you. We would have sites that would show up in search through paid ads, through high and organic search that would drive traffic. However, the listings for each one of these businesses that were partners, with the Alpha 411 or Yext calls at the time, we were posting all the information about the business except for a unique phone number that we created for them. And that's how we did the call tracking, and that's how we understood what calls were coming through and which ones we could bill for and which ones, were charged and which ones weren't. And so sort of the light bulb went off at the time is like, why are these businesses that have been around for as long as they have 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years allowing us to post their information with a completely different phone number than what is actually their direct line? And you realize that in organic search, in just finding the way, finding businesses online, the challenge is that managing and maintaining that local information across, search properties like Google, like Yelp, like Bing is almost impossible. And in reality, the control of the data actually belongs to the publisher and not necessarily the business owner. And so for a business owner saying, look, I know that my phone number is, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. But if you're going to get me more calls because nobody's finding me on Google, give me the calls. I don't care what number it is. And that's sort of what, again, like I said, that light bulb went off and it said, well, maybe we should just fix the actual information for the business because that's going to yield better results all around.
Yeah. And when you made that switch, because you're already, I guess, how many years into the business were you when you kind of switched into it?
So if I had to guess, I think so, the company officially launched in, I think, October of 06. I joined in just about March or April of 07. And it was probably somewhere in the 2011, 2012 where we bifurcated and Yext Calls went off to do its thing, which eventually sold, which I rebranded to Felix, eventually sold to IAC. And sometime 2011, 2012 is when the listings, business began. And obviously, since IPO'd in 2017 and is still flourishing today.
And was that a scary switch at the time? Were people sort of wondering whether, all right, is this going to work? And did it start working right away? Or, was there sort of like an uncertainty at the time?
Yeah, so I would say, look, to the founders' credits, they were always willing to take massive bets, right, and risk everything to try and make it work. And look, sometimes things work, sometimes things don't. There's definitely a few products that we tried, big risks that didn't pay off. But quite honestly, when that transition was happening, when they were splitting the company into two, Bryan, the guy I mentioned earlier, he called me into his office and he sat me down. And, this was years later. I had my first kid at the time. And he asked me, he said, like we had a heart-to-heart conversation. Are you up for this again? Right? Because we just went through 5 years of true building a startup from the ground up to what it became. And we were about to do it again. Look, I believed in him. I believed in the mission of the company and what we were trying to accomplish. And so heads down, we split the company. We were in Chelsea Market at the time. And we had the 7th and 8th floors of Chelsea Market. And we basically put one company on the 8th floor. And we started the new company from scratch on the 7th floor. And away we went.
Very cool. Awesome to have an office in Chelsea Market. Just go downstairs and get good food too.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Yeah. And after you made this transition, was there sort of like an aha moment where you realized, okay, like this is actually working and it's really kind of taking off?
So I don't know if there was really an aha moment, but we certainly knew that we had, we sort of cracked a code on what businesses really wanted and really needed. And, whether this statement is true or not, I will credit Yext for basically creating the concept of this, listings environment and ensuring and managing your data across, as many publishers and having as much structured data and content as you can that can be shared, as often as possible. There have been many companies that have popped up since that offer similar solutions. But I would say that, at the time we were definitely the pioneers. And so in reality, again, like my belief is that we educated the industry, right? There was no concept of doing what we did prior to us creating that capability. And it was I don't want to say a difficult sales cycle, but telling somebody you can do something that nobody else has ever been able to do before is a difficult thing to convince somebody of. Obviously, once they use the technology and they see that it works, it's a home run. But it takes time to educate an industry. Conversations, today, everyone kind of gets that this product is a need to have, not a want to have.